from Automotive Addicts. Today I'm bringing you the 2020 Infiniti Q60 Red Sport 400. Now the Infiniti brand, as it has been the past few years, has kind of been a mixed bag in some ways. We really haven't understood what their direction is right now. Maybe, hopefully, looking in the next few years, they might have some new products on the horizon, some electrification. But until then, they have some very nice vehicles like this Q60 here. Now the Q60 I have today is the top of the line trim, the Red Sport 400. And believe it or not, the only ways to tell the difference in the car is maybe the wheels, some of the trim on the vehicle, and of course the badging. The badging here, the red S, indicates the Red Sport. This one has a really nice engine. It is the 3.0 liter V6 twin turbocharged, 400 horsepower and 350 pound-feet of torque. Believe it or not, the engine is derived from the GTR's engine, the Nissan GTR, and it is a rear-wheel drive car. You can get it in all-wheel drive for the Q60 and the Q50. Overall, it is a very sharp vehicle. I get a lot of praises everywhere I drive this thing. It's very sharp. Infiniti has done well with this. It's just one of those cars that's still carrying the brand outside of the SUVs. Infiniti doesn't have that many vehicles to offer right now, but the Q60 and the Q50 stand strong as far as their coupe and sedan vehicles. The last couple years of the Q60, they've actually added a larger tire size. They now actually have 20-inch wheels right here and wider tires out in the back. There are 275s in the back, and up front you have 255s. And also, these red calipers, they are 4 piston calipers up front and 2 piston calipers out back. You probably watched one of my older videos on a vehicle that we owned as a family vehicle for some time, our 2009 Infiniti FX50S. I actually said some things on that video that kind of still ring true when that was when Infiniti was great. But I think in vehicles like this, they still have a little taste of that greatness still left over. Unfortunately, Infiniti, I think, has kind of lost their way, but vehicles like this, you know, give me hope in the brand. It's actually one of the best sounding V6s I've witnessed on the market currently. It sounds pretty good. That twin turbo V6, it almost has a sound from the GTR, that whoosh, that vacuum sound from those turbos you get from the exhaust, believe it or not. All right, inside of the Infiniti Q60 Red Sport, door trim, you have these large doors. It is a coupe, 4-seater vehicle. Had these nice red leather seats in here on this particular test vehicle. Out back, it is tight. You do have this button here to move your seat advance forward automatically without holding anything. Rear seats back here, pretty tight. But you can get a normal, quote-unquote, normal size adult back here. Children should have no problem. Very, very little leg room. Press the button here to move the seat back. Alright, inside the 2020 Infiniti Q60 Red Sport. Go ahead and start it up. Push button start. So here inside the cabin of the Infiniti Q60, the 2020 Red Sport, as you notice, the gauge cluster is somewhat of an H gauge cluster. Infiniti's been using this similar design in many of their vehicles for many, many years now. They do have somewhat of an updated center screen here. It is a full color screen here in the center, but you do have your fixed RPM and fixed miles per hour gauge over here. On the steering wheel on this particular vehicle, there is no adaptive cruise control. That's probably one of the only features that's actually missing from this vehicle, aside from the direct adaptive steering, which I'll go over here in a second and tell you about that. Otherwise, you do have your LED headlight controls over here, automatic with the LED fog lights, your window controls, mirror controls, very simple. Driver seat memory. And moving over here to the infotainment system is probably one of the controversial things about the Infiniti vehicles, especially the Q60 and the Q50. It's this dual screen setup here. It is somewhat intuitive, but I find there is a slight learning curve for most people in getting used to this system and having the 2 screens. Fortunately enough, they do have Apple CarPlay now and also Android Auto integration. But for the most part, your Apple CarPlay will come up on this screen up top, and most of your audio functions and your climate control functions are down here in this lower screen, along with some of the other vehicle settings. Once the system does initially load up, it takes a few seconds to actually do its initial load, but once it goes through that, the system is somewhat responsive. Moving over here, you do have very few physical climate controls over here and over here on the right. You do have your automatic dual climate control system, and down here you have your stereo controls. Like I said, once again, very few controls here, physical buttons. And moving down here is a infotainment controller. It actually does bump up, down, left, right, turns, and you have your dedicated map button. Camera button brings up the 360-degree view camera up here in the top screen. And you have your drive mode button here, drive mode toggle. Actually, there's a total of 6 drive modes in the vehicle. Funny enough, they're very subtle changes in the drive of the car. This one does have adaptive dampers. They are only like 2 settings for the adaptive dampers, a sport and a normal mode. And there is a personal mode. Funny enough, for the personal mode, which actually I use quite often, you actually have to set up the personal mode down here in the screen for going over here to your drive mode selector and selecting these particular parameters for that drive mode. And this pertains to the personal mode. One thing that is missing from here, usually in the steering settings, is the direct adaptive steering system, which I do not like. Luckily, this vehicle does not have that. It has a direct electrical steering rack that is physically connected to the front wheels. With the direct adaptive steering system, which is optional, you have a servo control system. Basically, your steering wheel is not physically connected to the wheels. It's more controlled by, it's like drive-by-wire in a sense. But I won't dwell on that system. I hate it. I really enjoy this steering over that direct adaptive steering. This feels more natural. And down here you have your front heated seat controls. You can actually do an automatic mode for these. Unfortunately, there is no front seat cooling, which I think something's missing from the Infiniti Q60 and Q50 vehicles. Something they've overlooked the past few years that I think that needs to be added for a luxury vehicle. And moving over the rest of the interior, you got your cup holders down here. In here you have your USB-C and a standard USB-A port and an auxiliary port for your audio input. And funny enough, right here, this button right here, these 2 buttons, is actually your ambient lighting. Infiniti only has 1 color for the ambient lighting and 2 modes of brightness and an off for the ambient lighting. It's kind of a joke, but it actually looks okay at night somewhat. You get a little ambient lighting through this trim here, this simulated carbon fiber trim. And for the most part, the dashboard is soft touch. You got soft touch down here as well. But it's a nice cabin overall. But I do ding it, like I said, for being slightly a little bit outdated, I think, at this point. But that's not where this car shines. I think this car shines as far as the overall package and getting that twin-turbo V6 engine, which we'll take it here for a ride here in a second. All right, setting off in the 2020 Infiniti Q60 Red Sport. Now, I don't know if you can pick up on the microphone the exhaust sound of the car. Like I said before, it's one of the best sounding V6 engines I think that's around. They've added the different exhaust tips on there. I think that it kind of changes some of the tone of the car. So in driving the Infiniti Q60 Red Sport, the gem of the car is the engine. I mean, that's a really sweet engine. The 400 horsepower, 350 pound-feet of torque. It's derived from the Nissan GT-R's engine. It's just the best thing about this car. The only thing I think is holding the engine back is unfortunately the transmission, the 7-speed automatic transmission, which has been used in Infiniti vehicles for many, many years. But otherwise, I think the chassis dynamics are great. Near the 50-50 weight distribution, the balance of the vehicle is excellent. It rides good. The adaptive dampers do well to keep the car nice and smooth without any unwanted bouncing. It being a rear-wheel drive vehicle makes it all more fun. And like I said before, with the steering not being the direct adaptive steering, it's great, you know, having that direct connection with the steering. Otherwise, that steering system I think is garbage. I'm sorry, Infiniti, for saying that, but that's what I believe. I'm sticking to it. But once again, I think this is one of the better sounding V6 engines through that exhaust. They have different exhaust tips back there, I think, that are kind of making the sound a little bit different than I remember before. It's very throaty, has a little bit of drone when you're cruising at highway speeds. But otherwise, it sounds really good. The car is very solid. The cabin is pretty quiet except for that exhaust. You do get a little bit of, I think, is almost like an artificial noise pumped in here. I'm not certain if it is an artificial noise, but I do hear it, especially when you put it in Sport Plus mode for the drive mode. And the car will roast the rear tires, believe it or not. It's pretty quick for what it is. 0 to 60 comes on about 4.5, 4.6 seconds. But it's something I really enjoy driving. The Infiniti Q60 Red Sport is a very sweet car, and I urge people that are shopping for a luxury sports coupe car to definitely check this out. But just like any of my cars on Automotive Addicts and testing them, I will do a 0 to 60. Like I said, 0 to 60 comes on pretty quick on this car, 4.6, 4.5 seconds. I've actually seen some tests that actually got 4.4 seconds, which is unbelievable. I think for a vehicle like this, that's not a performance branded vehicle like a BMW M or a Mercedes AMG vehicle. But here we go. 40, 50, and 60. I don't think you can hear some of that exhaust sound. Like I said before, it does sound somewhat like a GTR, believe it or not, in the exhaust. I guess some of that sound, what I remember from driving GTRs, many GTRs over the past. It sounds like a vacuum cleaner almost in some ways. And you get that little subtle roar from the exhaust as well. And you do have these shift paddles up here for manually shifting the gears. The 7-speed automatic transmission, because it is such an age transmission, Infiniti's done well with the programming of it. It lands in the right gear each time you need it. But in the luxury coupe world, there's a few other offerings out there that kind of shine above the Q60 Red Sport. But as far as having an all-around package for not that much money, you're looking at spending about $58,000, $59,000 for this vehicle. And it only has a couple more features you can add, which is a direct adaptive steering and adaptive cruise control. Otherwise, it's a pretty much fully loaded vehicle. And I think that's quite a competitive price for something like this with this amount of performance and that 0 to 60 time. If you're wanting to have some fun with a nice stylish coupe that's kind of unique, stands out in the crowd, doesn't look like anything else on the road, this is where you want to be. It's a nice performer. I enjoy it myself. It might be something I would buy if they had a performance variant of it with a little more kick to it, I think. But otherwise, that's pretty much all I have for you for the 2020 Infiniti Q60 Red Sport. I appreciate all you guys watching, hanging in there with me. You subscribing really helps me out a lot. Make sure you smash that subscribe button, give it a thumbs up. All your support helps me out a lot in growing my channel. And I hope you come back, watch my other videos. And until then, I will catch you guys in the next one.